we decided that one of our big initiatives for the year would be to focus on student voice. And student voice is basically, anyone who's taken a business class already knows about stakeholders and how there's different stakeholders in a school. You have the teachers, you have the admin, you have parents, you have students. And so student voice is basically an initiative to get students more involved and actually get their opinions across so that every student actually has the opportunity to let the school know what their thoughts are, what their opinions are on certain topics. So this town hall is an opportunity to increase student voice and get a sort of feel for what each grade wants and thinks are as concerns. So my name is Christopher Thomas. I'm a member of the Executive Leadership Council. And here we have...
I'm Astrid from DECA. Oh, I'm Dana from ELC.
I'm Sajini from ELC.
I'm Eliana from DECA. I'm Medusa from ELC.
And I'm Mr. Wetzel from the office.
Okay, so we want to get started pretty quick because we only really have first period for this. So we open the floor to maybe someone who already has a concern or an opinion. Treadwell?
You do have to use the microphone only. It sounds silly because we're so close to each other, but it's more for the webcam stuff.
Well, I think we should, instead of having Camp White Pine for only grade 9s, I think we should have like a Camp O for grade 12s for the last year. I mean, like, it's because like Camp White Pine is a retreat for freshmen, right? So why couldn't we have a good retreat, a good ending retreat to our school year for grade 12? Because like we want to enjoy the school year, but we don't really do much. We don't really go much on trips unless the class offers it. So that wouldn't really be fair if we didn't do much, right? And also lunch food, or the lunch inside the cafeteria. Like, you guys, the school charges us $4 for sandwiches or pasta or something. If you guys are gonna charge us $4, at least make the food better, or no offense, better options, because like it's always the same thing: chicken sandwich, pulled pork, pasta, pierogies, some Asian teriyaki. Like, make something good. Like, I've seen other schools with better options, and I wouldn't want to waste. If I was a student that was brand new here, I wouldn't want to waste $4 on food that doesn't even taste good or tastes plastic.
Okay, we'll kind of go topic at a time. And it sounds, I mean, the first one was an interesting one. And I think as grade 12s, you really have kind of two perspectives that I hope that you're going for. One is looking back on your time here as the most senior students and saying, you know, here's my experience and here's what, you know, some things that could be done differently. Or the other thing is stuff you need to absolutely keep. Because remember, and I've said this at every town hall, if we start a new initiative, there's only so much money, there's only so many teachers, there's only so much staff, there's only so much time. So if we want to start something new, oftentimes that means something that we've done stops. And you don't want to stop something really good to start something else, right? So we got to know what are those things that you guys really value as well. So it's probably something that you want to keep in mind with that. The idea of a grade 12 retreat, like an overnight, is that kind of what you're looking at? There's some challenges to that. There's schools that do it as well. You know, the school that I taught at had a huge tradition of a overnight grade 12 retreat. It was one of those absolutes that had to happen, and you know there would have been anarchy if we had tried to pull it. So that's a possibility. The good thing is that you have the chaplain who's here in the room with us listening, and so there might be input that goes there. Take in mind what that means, right? Is there's a cost to that. Well, grade 12s, including the overgrads, is like 400 grade 12s, and so that's a big group. Does everybody go? Is it one event? Is it several? So there's things that you have to think about, but there might be a chance now that if there's an appetite for something like that. There's work to do, but I think most people would rather do work for something people want, and so that's a possibility for sure. So maybe, you know, I think one of those topics could be something about what would you like to see for your grade 12 year. And then we can get into, I think we will get into some of the technicalities of the CAP, and I'll explain a few of those things for sure. But maybe open it up to people if was there discussion in your homerooms about other things that you'd like to see occur, like events or something like that in the your grade 12 year.
Oh, how come? So if you said that we can't, we have to cancel something to put in this retreat, right? We already canceled winter activity day last year. That I don't know if that happened or what, but oh, I heard it was canceled back.
Yeah, we haven't had it since, I think you guys are in grade 9, right? It's been a few years. Yeah, and I mean, I'm not saying that necessarily that to have an overnight retreat, something else has to cancel, but oftentimes that's the case, right? I mean, you have to understand that there's only so many hours in the day and there's only so much money in the budget that you have to say, you know, we have to stop something or start something, and again, realize, hey, there's classes that people actually have to attend as well. So it doesn't mean that there's necessarily a trade-off, one for one. But just that's why we want to say, what are the good things too, because you don't want to get rid of the stuff that everybody likes.
Just adding on to the dates and classes, what about if we could do this grade 12 retreat before the start of March break? So be like, hey, here's a good retreat, now go have a nice March break. We don't miss any classes, and you get to relax after. You don't have to worry about going to class the next morning.
Yeah, I mean, let's not jump the gun to say, okay, yeah, we've decided that there is going to be an overnight retreat for everybody. But yeah, timing is an issue. You know, there's a debate, is it better to have it earlier in the year than later in the year, or is it better to have it later? I mean, those are part of the question. And if that comes up as maybe there's a call out for an organizing committee of people, then some concerned grade 12s who want to have something to do with it might voice their input as to timing and location and the elements that are involved in that. For sure, that's a possibility. But remember, we do want to represent your homeroom, right? So there's discussions that happen, I assume. So let's get into some of that stuff.
Well, first I'd like to say, like, the PAC intramural, so like the soccer and the volleyball, those are good events that we should keep. But ever since grade 9, I've always been one of those kids who, when the gym's empty after school, I wanted to go and play basketball with a couple friends. And I think we should, because obviously if we want and tackle these issues, we need to put money into it. So if we were to have like some sort of tournament throughout the school year or something like that over a course of a couple of weeks after school in the gym, and it could raise money to tackle these issues. So like a basketball tournament, 5-on-5 or something like that.
That's a great idea. And I mean, you guys are in a particularly good situation in which a lot of times schools have trouble organizing such things because they don't have a structure in place that can organize. You have a Panthers Athletic Council, so you have already a structure in place. And so there's a possibility is, could there be an after-school intramural league that goes on? You know, there's challenges that go with that, right? Is you got to find out supervision, who's going to supervise it, who's going to sponsor it, who's going to, you know, the gym is often used, right? Because there's so many things that go on in the school. But that's definitely a possibility. You know, when I was a student here, that was a big event. We had basketball. We had a very active basketball intramural thing where the members of the senior boys basketball team acted as coaches, and we had drafts and we had training camps and all this. Like literally, it was quite a big production. So that's a possibility. There's tradition there that exists. But you know, I like that idea as well. Some of the grade 9s talked about doing that as well. They talked about following up on Camp White Pine. I mean, they had these groups and these tribes or whatever you want to call it. So there's already a team structure in place. Maybe there's a possibility of piggybacking on that and offering it at different grades. So there's a real possibility for sure. And that's, you know, again, all these notes go to the different councils. They're going to hear about it. So PAC's going to hear about that request as well. Thank you.
Okay, so my homeroom talked a lot, but obviously I have to go topic by topic and give other people a chance. But just want to start with our education. So textbooks, novels, everything that students use, we must have each and every one for each student. Because back in my homeroom class, in my religion classroom, we don't have enough religion textbooks. So one kid has to say, you know what, here, have my book. Then it's kind of hard for that other student to do their work. So it's every student has to have a book with them. You come to school for learning, and when you have to give away a book, it's hard. So maybe we could put some money into getting some new books, so we have one for each student.
Yeah, I mean, that's a, always a point when in a school of our size. That's why they're so, we're so diligent about returning textbooks. The amount of money, I think we put money into textbooks, yeah. So, I mean, every year, the year before I got here, we spent $60,000 on textbooks alone. And that's just for a couple, we can't do the whole school at one time. That would be several $100,000. If you think about one of those science textbooks costs about $180 a textbook, right? And they just keep going up in price. We also spend around $7,000 to $10,000 a year on lost textbooks. So you might not think it's a very big dollar, I forgot to say, but that's what we do. And that's not money that we get from anybody. So it's just totally lost money. So there is an issue with that for sure. I have my own personal stance on textbooks. Not a big fan of textbooks. Textbooks are out of date the moment that they're printed. They're obsolete the moment that they're printed, but I understand that there's a tool that's used. So I know some teachers are trying to, find creative ways around it because there's a thought that maybe there's a better way to spend $60,000 to $70,000 a year. And then the trade-off is are people photocopying too much, and then we spend $50,000 a year on paper as well, which is an obscene amount of money. But so yeah, there's that debate as well, and so that's give that feedback to the teachers to say this is kind of where we're lacking. That all the department heads come to me with those requests as well, and we try to balance out who needs it right now the most, and that's just the reality of school. Is that if you try to keep up with the demand as far as changing curriculum and the fact that so many are lost all the time, it would be it's cost prohibitive to have absolutely a copy for every single student all the time. That's why you have shared class sets. That's why a lot of times teachers won't let textbooks go home because they need it for the next class, uses it as well. So yeah, that's a balancing act for sure.
Talking about education and stuff, our class was saying that we should find supply teachers for that class, not just a random teacher just to come in and just sit around and watch us. We should have somebody there that knows knowledge about that subject, so that way we're not wasting time when we are getting our education, because this is an important year for all of us. So if we can get a teacher that can help us out rather than just sit there and watch us, that'd be really beneficial for us.
Yeah, and again, that's one of those things that's somewhat out of our control, and that, you make a good point that perhaps when the VPs are assigning, the problem is that when we get an occasional teacher, that's what they're called now, they don't call themselves supply teachers anymore, when we get an occasional teacher in the morning, so literally Mr. Burns right now is doing it, so he'll come in and there's a list of, here's the teachers who are out, here's who you get. You have no idea what their qualifications are whatsoever, and they do not have to have qualifications in a specific subject to get it. You can understand the amount of that go on the board, right? I mean, we have somewhere in the vicinity of 8,000 teachers in the school board. And on the, we have something like 2,700 teachers on the occasional teachers list. So it's just a computer that just generates and goes to, calls this person, calls this person, calls this person accepts the job, they go. They're not saying, are you in English? Are you a this? Are you a that? So it's really tough. The one way around that is that teachers can, for certain jobs, they can actually request a supply. So they can say, this is somebody that I know, and this is who I request to have in. So that can happen, sort of. Perhaps the request is if you have a grade 12 class, be very, very particular about what it is that you're leaving when you're not there as much as possible. But that's a tough order to fill when it's not us calling. It's not like we call the people out. It's an automatic system that's done throughout the school board because there's so many teachers. I mean, even in our school, there's 92 teachers. And so on any given day, there's between, 5 and one day there was 30 teachers out. And so we have to, you really do have to scramble around. I know that Mr. Burns, when one of our own teachers is in there, He tries to be able to put teachers that would make sense. You know what I mean? When we have two teachers who'll cover a period, they try to do that so that, you know, maybe a math teacher, if they're up for an on-call, that's what that's called, maybe put them in a math class, as much as that makes sense, but it's a heck of a puzzle. Just go by the office about 8 o'clock in the morning and try to have a conversation with Mr. Byrne. Good luck, because he's got a sea of paper that he's trying to organize. But you're right, is the fact is, what can we do to make sure that those times aren't just wasted or, you know, filler time?
Can you pass the mic back to Fred, actually? Sorry. Slide the mute button up. Yeah, the switch.
Okay, so in your talk about time being wasted, we spoke about in our homeroom that the announcements go on way too late. On Monday of last week, they ended at 8:39, Tuesday 8:41, going all the way to Thursday at 8:43. So in total, in about a week, you lose around a period of things that we could do. And this also takes a toll on how we learn things and the amount of things we could learn. In addition, the clocks, if you just look up, they're off by 3 minutes. The school bells, you know,
They're off by about 5 or 6 hours, right?
Yeah. So I'd say a big problem also is that we're losing too much time at the beginning of the day, where we could be doing work, but we're just listening to announcements that will come on at the end of the day, the beginning of the next day, the end of the next day, and so forth. So I'd say that we could use that time better. Perhaps we could have a board outside, like a bulletin of all the announcements, rather than saying it on the announcements in the morning or a TV. So there are other ways, clearly, that we could get across these announcements, not only by the PA system, which not many listen to anyways, unfortunately.
I'm most impressed that you're looking for more time to do more work. That's excellent. So I'll make sure the teachers fill that in for sure. That's a common refrain, and that's one that I've been hearing from the teaching staff as well, particularly the fourth period announcements, because first period actually has time worked in for announcements, right? The first period is, I think, 10 minutes longer, but fourth period isn't. But if there's the same kind of announcements, you're cutting off time. So we've looked into that for sure, and you know, this comment will facilitate my next actions, which I've already looked at a solution for a video announcement screens. So we're going to invest in 3 TV screens throughout the school. I'm thinking probably in the front foyer. One down by guidance, because that's going to be for guidance for scholarships and all the information that comes out of guidance, because there's a lot of stuff there. And then perhaps one down in the big pit, you know, behind the cafeteria. And that will have, we've already looked at it, I've talked to the IT department, and they've got a solution that's a web-based kind of a CP24 style screen. So you can have video that's going, you can have scrolling announcements, you can have, you know, anything really, Twitter feeds, you know, all those sorts of things there. So the idea is to have announcements that are ongoing. The good thing about that too is I think we can set it up so that you can actually access it from a tablet as well. So you can just pull up and have the announcements going on your tablet or your smartphone all the time as well, so that you can see them. We're looking into that for sure. So I had to do a little bit of background as to find out, is it possible? Yes, it is. What's involved? And then also the facilities to get the, it's not just a matter of plopping the screen up on the thing. We got to get people to do that. So I'm glad to hear that there's a call for that, a student voice for that, because there's certainly been a teacher's voice for that. We've had conversations about that, and I demoed it for teachers. I would say that this week I'm going to be purchasing 3 TVs, and then we're going to be on that for sure.
Talking about announcements and the PA system, like PA system mostly when it's not working, it actually causes disruptions in class, like it starts beeping out of nowhere. Also, talking about like the TVs and everything, in my opinion, since since we're in the 21st century, we can take away the poster announcements and have the councils or the people, promoting the events have like a video promotion that they can put up on TV, so it always plays, and it also saves paper, and like it's better for the promotion because sometimes students rip out the posters, sometimes it ends up in the garbage.
Absolutely, and I mean, there's some schools that are pretty far along on this. I've seen some demos from Notre Dame has a media literacy and media course, and so they actually do like a news broadcast that have like interviews with people, and it's pretty slick, pretty professionally done. And those are looping all the time on, they have some screens, and if they can do it, I mean, that school's like 100 years old, so I mean, if they can do it, we can pretty much handle it. It is 100 years old. My mother graduated from there, but not that she's 100, but it is pretty. The school number for that school is 5501. You know why it's 01? It's the first high school. Yeah, that's right in the board. Absolutely, we're 5531, so you figure it out. And so, yeah, absolutely. There's a possibility of doing that as well. There's real possibilities in this, in that you can stream live video. So technically, we could have the screens up and be streaming this. How cool and interesting would that be? People would just be flocking to the hallways to watch these events, but those sorts of things as well. And I'd like to really repurpose that area of the green pit. I mean, it's not used nearly well enough, and there's some things that I've done for that, and maybe when we get into the more of the cafeteria talk, there's something we can talk about that. But I'm glad to hear that there is a student need for that, and that'll definitely inspire me to make one purchase that I was planning on making this week anyway.
One thing before like we pass on the mic, it's like we're on the topic of education and everything. Since our school name is James Hussein, like we need to renovate our school also, and without also textbooks and teachers are important. But the other thing important also is desks. Like we have broken desks, broken chairs. Like if there's a way we can replace them and get like ergonomic chairs or better chairs for the students so that they can do their work efficiently, I think that would be good.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, there's another movement that we've kind of adopted here in the school, talking about the third teacher, and to sum that up is the idea that one of the teachers that you face is really your environment. That really impacts what happens in your learning. And you could argue that a standard classroom environment isn't the most optimum for learning. I mean, would you set your room up like that? Is that where you go when you go to do homework at home? What does that area look like? It probably doesn't look like the classroom. Probably doesn't look like plastic chairs that are attached to desks and stuff like that. So we've been investigating that for sure. It's a process. Again, there's only so much money, and a school this size, it would be great to start from blank and have a blank check to be able to do amazing stuff with. We're tackling that one bit at a time, but some input from you guys as far as what would be what your learning style is different than ours. So what would you like to see? And that's sort of something like the Twitter hashtag, or the JPII Pulse hashtag. That's a great place to put stuff. I monitor it. A lot of people do. So that might be a good idea to say, oh, I saw this, or I heard this school has something that whatever, a good idea, or I saw this video on the internet. What about this? Those sorts of things would be great. I mean, the worst thing that I could possibly say is no. Right? I mean, no, that's not terrible, right? So the feedback is a good thing.
How are you going to do that? I want better mics. Why do we have to wear uniform in the CAF? Because we never did that before.
Yeah. Well, again, the uniform is a slippery slope, right? The most basic question is, why do you have to wear a uniform in the CAF? Is security. So the most vulnerable the school is to someone coming in who shouldn't be here is obviously at lunchtime, right? There's most students out of class, movement throughout, particularly the fact that we don't have enough room in the cafeteria for everybody in the CAF, so there's people moving through the hallways and stuff. The best security measure is the fact that we can identify people right out of the gate. Now, I mean, there is some debate about that, and yeah, I'm willing to sort of hear that conversation. I'm not willing to compromise on two things. I'm not willing to compromise on security. It's not going to happen, right? I can't compromise on security. I don't know how public schools do it. Truly, I don't know how they keep their buildings secure when everyone's just wearing their own thing. I mean, the uniform is a great equalizer in that way, so we know who's supposed to be here. But also, as soon as you start going with the uniform, that slope slides very fast. And I've seen schools where they've lost it, where they've lost the uniform. And it's just, why even have one if everybody's got their own version of it? So there's some debate around that, but I don't see why you go from class being in uniform, you have to go to your locker to put on a sweat top to go to the cafeteria. I really don't understand why you need to be out of uniform to be in the cafeteria. So yeah, that's kind of why we asked McCarthy's to have a sweat shop, not a sweat top. Sweat shop, no such shop. We'll edit that out. So yeah, I mean, there's some, you know, there's been some concerns about that or some questions about that. The chief one is security. I have to make sure that everybody who's in there is supposed to be there.
Also, okay, yeah, fine. Also, I was thinking, we should have like a school webpage where all that information could be posted also, just back on that.
Yeah. We do have a school webpage.
Like active?
Yeah, well.
And it looks awesome?
Yeah.
Like go on?
Well, there's some of the debate there. No, I mean, the problem is that it used to be about 5 years ago, 5 years ago, every school was kind of responsible for their own webpage. If you had one, if you didn't, if you kept it up. So some schools didn't. Some schools had some cool ones because they had, you know, classes running them, and then they will fall off. The board has now gone to what they call the portal, right? Everything is on one page. So all school web pages look pretty similar. They're very prescriptive, right? I'm not a fan of the platform. I was one of the people who was working at the board at the time when that was brought in, and what was promised was not entirely what was delivered. So the working of it, and Ms. DeSisto has worked on it, or Ms. Vigo, sorry, has worked on it with Ms. Morrison, with Mr. Sanchez, myself. It's not the most user-friendly platform in the world to be able to put stuff on. Definitely the notes from this will be on there, for sure, absolutely. But you're right, is there a better forum possibly for that? There probably is. We're still trying to figure out what that looks like so that it has access, because it's not just, you guys remember, this is an out-facing website, meaning it's for the public as well to be able to see. So there's always legalities around what can we put up there. But you're right, we have one, but the problem is who maintains it?
We love student volunteers.
Yeah, we had that, and then, you know, it sort of died off, right? So, you know, the best case scenario is where you would have a class that maintains that, because there has to be kind of a webmaster who does this every single day. There's just nobody on staff who can do that every single day, right? To keep it current. I mean, even right now, there's probably a bunch of information on there that's not accurate anymore. The board, you know, changes, you know, who the principal and the vice principals are, and that's kind of it, is what they maintain. So it's a process. The best case scenario would be if there's a class that's getting credit for it, that's constantly doing that. We're not at that point yet. Perhaps when we have the screens in, it would facilitate a class that, you know, there's an English media literacy course that they're trying to get back. We've had it before and the course has died because no one's taken it. That might be a good spot for it. That might be a good course to do it.
Going back to the uniform topic, I just want to know, how come we aren't allowed to wear, sometimes teachers won't let us wear the athletic sweaters. How come we're not allowed to wear it if we purchased it? So we practically wasted like what, $45, $25 on a sweater that we can't even wear, or like the Shizm sweater that's only offered for one class, and I heard that it's being taken out as, it's not counted as uniform anymore. That is, I guess, fair, but like what I'm trying to say is like, why can't we have uniform for our students that have fitness class that they could wear to class, or like for example, pants that's for fitness, or pants they could wear after fitness class that's counted as uniform. That's technically like gray, because like it's not really fair how we students are sometimes late to class just because we're changing, and we get in trouble from teachers. Oh, how come you're late? Blah 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 blah. That's your fault. You should have rushed. We can't, like, we have nothing to do. We're tired, or we also worked out, and like, what do you expect from us? And we're all sweaty, so obviously you don't want to come to class sweaty unless you want to smell like bad BO. No one wants that.
Yeah, I mean, there's always that question with the uniform, right? And what options to wear. I mean, the athletic uniform is for phys ed class. And you know, then you get into that slippery slope. Well, I mean, I have a basketball game after school, so I should be able to wear my basketball uniform to class, and I should be able to. Then you don't really have a uniform anymore, right? There is a point, there's a reason for that there's a uniform. There's a lot of really great reasons for the uniform. And the irony is the more options you have, then I have the other people that I have to serve to are parents who come and say, I can't afford these options anymore. There's so many different things, and they're getting pricey. It's an expensive proposition. Now, I would argue that having a uniform is a lot cheaper than having to keep up with fashion trends all the time. And you can have a uniform that lasts, for probably a couple of years. And if you have to buy it twice, then that's a whole lot better than having to buy the latest fashion trends for every single day. But there's issues to that. I'm not a fan of alterations to the uniform. And I mean, a lot of the councils probably aren't that thrilled with me in the fact that I take away that option too. So the councils don't have different tops anymore. I would prefer, if you're going to have a uniform, that you have a uniform. There's a reason that it's called that there is a uniform to it. Now, as far as timing goes, yeah, that's on the, if you're thinking that there's not enough time, bring that up to your teachers to say, if I'm in first period phys ed class, maybe, sir, ma'am, we need another 5 minutes because we're not getting to class in time. And then you got to, look at yourselves too and say, how much, how effective am I at actually getting up and getting going and moving on, or am I spending a little bit too much time talking as well? There has been some points about, could we have alterations, the guys having issues with when it's so hot in the summer, could there be shorts that, we've had that before. When I was a student here, they had uniform shorts, and almost no one wore them. The problem was that you had to wear dress shoes with the shorts. Yeah. Now, it's a little bit different now. Maybe it's different now because when I was here, you couldn't wear black running shoes. You had to have all black dress shoes with all black socks. You couldn't even wear different colored socks. So that's changed. Maybe there's a possibility now. Maybe people would I have conversations with McCarthy's every year, several of them, to talk about the uniform. If you want to add something, you want to take something away. There's a possibility that maybe, we demo a uniform shorts. But then there's a slippery slope that goes with that, right? And then it's going to be, what kind of shoes are we wearing? What kind of this, what kind of that? You know how it looks anyway when the warm weather comes. Girls decide they're going to wear their kilt and not wear socks, and they're wearing kind of slippers, and then all of a sudden that's not appropriate. So there's a slope there that goes with it for sure. But we're willing to sort of take that feedback and say what's good feedback, as opposed to I just don't want to wear a uniform. Okay, I get that, but you kind of chose to wear a uniform when you decided to come here, and that we all knew that was happening, right? There's been a uniform here since the doors open, so.
This is working for you. Back on the topic of announcements, why don't we do something like a radio show? So like in the morning, we could have like notes on the board, but yet there's the radio show in the background that tells the announcements. And possibly like during first period or maybe even fourth period, there's like music that the students recommend to play. Because sometimes it's really boring when you're just doing seat work and there's just like dead air in the background.
Yeah, I mean, the problem is there's 60 classes going on at any given time, right? And while some classes are doing seat work, some classes are doing tests, and some classes are doing presentations, and some classes are doing lessons. So I don't think anybody would want elevator music being streamed through the PA at all hours. But I mean, the possibility that if there was, this is going to happen. There will be the announcement boards will happen. My hope is that there'll be access so that other people could access them. So you could possibly have that going in a classroom as well. Like if the teacher wanted to. Is there a possibility? Yeah, you can put even music on those announcements. I'm not going to have music in the hallways. It's not going to happen. It's just because there's classes going on and stuff like that. We have to remember why we're here too, right? I mean, it's not a community center or a mall, right? So the point is what goes on in those classrooms and how to best facilitate that. If taking away some of the time that happens on announcements takes away from class time, then absolutely, that's going to happen.
On the topic of, the music would be something that students want. I agree that our education is important, but also our comfortability in the classrooms are also important, because if the students don't feel comfortable or aren't really, engaged in whatever's happening in class, they're not going to want to do their work, and that leads to, problems.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, comfort. You're right, and that's why we've looked at this idea of the environment of the school. When I say environment, I don't mean save the whales and stuff like that. That's not what we're talking about. What we're talking about, the environment in which you learn, absolutely is important. And we're looking at how to best, and I'd love to see, again, suggestions on how to do that. I know there's been a lot of call for people, the announcements, the music in the morning for the announcements. I would take suggestions again. Remember, there's always, you gotta look behind the scenes a little bit and say, all those songs have to be vetted. And what I mean by vetted is we can't just put up requests for whatever students ask for. Because even on the JP Pulse, there's been some songs suggested that are obscene and ridiculous. And no, I'm serious. Like, I'm not even joking. Like, they're absurd. And I know what you're thinking now, oh, that's not obscene. Trust me, in 5 years, you'll look back and go, that's ridiculous, that's absurd. And that's not going to happen in the school, right? There will not be songs that are degrading to women ever in the school, ever. If I go to a dance and I hear it, we're shutting it down. So that's not going to happen. So that won't happen. That has to be vetted. Why? I'm responsible for it. Because what happens? One kid goes home, says to their parent, you can't believe the song that was played this morning. What do I hear? I hear from my superintendent, who a parent has called the superintendent and said what's going on. And then all of a sudden, all your music stopped. There's not going to be any. So we gotta say, what's the process then for how we vet music? So how do we do that? Perhaps it's the idea that you put up suggestions on the JP Pulse, and one day a week there's a request day where one of the songs that's been requested is played, instead of that, right? So absolutely, there's a possibility for that, sure, but you got to think, okay, not only this is what we want to have occur, but what would be the mechanism to get that in? Okay, so that's part of the process. That's why the councils are here, for sure, right? Because they want to hear about this.
All right, so we were talking about security earlier, and one of my issues is in the gym. You know how there's cameras? So most of the crimes that occur in the gym happen along the walls, but the cameras can't catch that. The cameras are only looking towards the bleachers. So even if something happens in the gym, we can't even follow who did it or what's going on. So you can't even prevent that crime from happening. So what I was thinking is crimes that look towards the doors, and so you see what's going on. Because throughout this year already, I've already heard so many people getting robbed, so many people things going missing, and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, it's not people getting robbed as much, because let's just use the proper language, because what that entails is that someone was actually physically assaulted while that was happening, right? That's not what's happening. Yeah, sure, things have been taken. There is, and I'll be completely honest with you, yes, there's cameras that face out and not in. Why is that? Because the gym is actually technically designated as a teaching area. And it is against regulations for us to have cameras in teaching areas. So we can't have them in classrooms. That's an arrangement that's made with the ministry and the different unions, and so you can't actually have, that's why there's none in classrooms. The gym is considered a teaching area, but because of those are exit doors. So that's why we can have that. We can have cameras that face the exit doors, because we need to be able to keep the building secure. So that's why we can have those cameras. You can't have cameras facing in. And that's nothing that we can control. That's not something that we can control for sure. What we can control is the protocols around securing things while you're participating in events in the school. So do we have to look at things like a secure location in a change room? Or do we have a locking cage? Do we take a look at some of the doors that do lock in the gym and repurpose some of that area to say, this is where, when you do a gym class, you're going to drop all your stuff and secure it there. I mean, I think there needs to be a better way around that. And some of those stuff have happened during basketball or one of the team practices. My suggestion to all the coaches is there should be no such thing as an open practice. All practices should be closed. When I coached sports, when I was a teacher, it was all closed practices. So you can't, if someone's practicing and has their bag there and there's 30 people who just hang around, those are the people that are going to be taking stuff. And so there's things that you can control. I don't think the answer is to say, let's put more security cameras in places where we're not ever going to be able to put them. Some of the stuff is, let's just do some common sense about how we secure our stuff. The other thing is don't have stuff that's of value in your bag. Maybe keep them in the locker where you can lock it, right? It would be one of my suggestions. I know it's easier said than done because you go from class and this and that, and you throw your phone in your bag, but maybe the idea is just to be thoughtful about, okay, where can I put this so that it's not going to be taken. It's unfortunate you have to think about that, absolutely.
I just want to go more towards the safety aspect about the auto shop. It's like just really like stupidly dirty, and like it's like a safety hazard. Like if like that auto shop was ever like audited, like someone is getting like in big trouble because it's like really dirty in there.
It is audited, it is inspected because it's a working environment. It is inspected every year. Yeah, Mr. Filito's constantly on with, you know, the grease traps and those sorts of things that are the oil containers. So yeah, there is a lot of that. There's a lot to be said for the people who are in the room too. I mean, the students have to be responsible for that. But it is safety audited every year to sort of say, are the machines in working order? That's the most dangerous room in the school, probably. Any of those shops are, and so there's constant things along that way. But you're right, it's a real battle with the facilities because we don't do that stuff. The caretakers don't do that sort of cleaning. That's industrial cleaning, and that's a constant. We have to be constantly vigilant about that for sure.
But like even then, like on the counters, like there's just like stuff piled like higher than your head.
Yeah, and so I mean, then maybe that's what like any environment, you know, the people in it are the ones responsible for it. So you got to figure out what's the best way to get around it and to deal with it.
Okay, just want to talk about the cleanliness of the school. Most people get sick at school, and then you can't go to school. So one thing is the bathrooms. I think the hand dryers should be replaced with paper towels because hand dryers actually spread more germs than anything. So you wash your hands, you're clean, and then you go dry your hands and you have germs spread on you because the germs stay in the heat and then they spread all over your hands. So also I think we should have hand sanitizers all around the school because there is sometimes no soap in the bathroom. I also think the people that need volunteer hours we could have like a clean team, I guess, or like disinfectant team, and maybe environmental.
What does that yearbook photo look like? I don't know about that.
Maybe environmental council can help with us. We can get environmental friendly products, and just, you know, at the end of the day, go wipe the door handles. People sneeze and touch the door, and it's disgusting. Because then, you know. Yeah.
I'm surprised. I mean, no one's gone near hall passes yet. I thought you guys would be like a fire extinguisher. No, we're not going to go there. Sorry, we've run out of time. Absolutely. I mean, the state of the school is always a case in any large space, right, where people live, work, eat, particularly, right, and so. Some of the issues that have come from that, I've heard that before. Again, what I would suggest is, you know, there's at most 3 or 4 caretakers in this building at any given time. That's a lot of space for 4 sets of eyes. If there's 1,400 sets of eyes that are sharing things, absolutely. That's what we'd like to be able to see, right? So I've heard that there's issues with, you know, some of the girls were talking about before that the girls' bathrooms are, you know, the mirrors are, you can't use them there, right? I don't know. I don't get to go into the girls' bathroom all that often. Yeah, so what I have done is I talked to Mr. Kuzak, who's the head caretaker, and this week, today or tomorrow actually, we're going to be doing sort of a tour of the bathrooms and figuring out what we can do. I think right away, me purchasing some mirrors is simple. It's easy to purchase them. It's getting them put up is another step, and that's what we're going to look at. So we're going to look at the facilities of the bathrooms for sure. The other thing is we've heard about that, hand sanitizers throughout. That's an easy one, and that's definitely going to happen. We're going to put those throughout the school at different places because there's, you know, what I'd like to see is a little bit more of a concentration of where people eat. Because right now people eat all over the school, and that just leaves a mess. And that, to be frank, that's on you guys. I mean, if you're going to eat in the hallway, it's disgusting. When I walk out the hallway after, I try to walk the hallway after lunch, and it's foul. Like people are just sitting there and they must just be eating and then just the bell rings and they just drop everything. And I'm not even exaggerating, like literally just put and just walk away. Like it's just like plates of stuff all over the floor, all on the ledges of the windows. That's on you guys. It's not me eating out there. It's not teachers eating out in the hallway. That's on you guys. So we're looking at possibly repurposing that large pit. So the large pit there will be, I just put the order in the other day, there will be high cafe style tables in that green, what's called the green pit, because it used to be green, the big pit behind the cafeteria. There'll be a bunch of tables in there that you could go. There'll be one of those screens in there. We'll have Purell like crazy all over the place there. So if we can focus a little bit of that and not have people eating in the hallways, there's people eating in the bathroom, that's just. No, I'm serious. It happens. So all those sorts of things. If we can as a school get on that, but as a school, there's 1,400 sets of eyes. If you see something, say something. So if you see something that's broken, there's no reason why. I mean, as long as it's in good taste, right? You're not going to go into someone's classroom and do something. But if you see something in their bathroom, take a picture of it with your phone, put it on that Twitter hashtag, and say, "This is something right here. Can we fix this?" And then we'll know, because it's hard to maintain every single room. There's 60 classrooms. I don't know how many bathrooms, hallways, plus all the mechanical stuff that the caretakers have to take care of. It's too much if it's just those eyes.
Okay, so I have another safety hazard actually. So it's about our front of the school. You know how there's a lot of cars going by back and forth. So just today actually it happened. I was crossing, right? And you know how pedestrians, they have the right of way to go? Well, it's our school ground, so yeah. So what I'm getting at is, today I was crossing the road and these cars, they saw me coming like across the street and they still kept going. The only person that actually stopped was this school bus. And the problem is that we should have crosswalks because that's a safety hazard. I feel like if we don't have those, there's a chance for one of these students in our school to get hurt by one of these cars or trucks or whatever, buses, anything.
Absolutely, and this is a common theme that's come up in every one of these town halls. And the good news about that is we've started that conversation. The city, or at least the structures that go in the city, have to catch up. For instance, the fact that there's a crosswalk down by the elementary school going into the plaza, right? There's a crosswalk there. Why is it there? One, because an elementary school has to have a crosswalk when it crosses a main street, but also because when those crosswalks was put in place, all of the houses, on Bondsfield, the ones that are across there, weren't there. So when I was a student here, none of those houses were there. There was nothing there. There was no street. So you couldn't actually cut through. And so what's happening now more is that people get whatever the bus is that comes down in the morning, so I don't even know what the bus is, and they cut through, right? They don't go all the way to Military Trail, they cut through. And that was never an issue before. So the only bus that you would get was the one that came down to Military Trail. Students would walk up and be able to cross the crosswalk. Now there's probably a need for another crosswalk because all of a sudden there's access. They have responded to that because you can't cut through there anymore, right? So between the hours of 7 a.m. and 9 a.m. in the morning, you can't actually enter that street. That's illegal. So the good news about this is I've published these notes to the teachers, and Officer Dave has responded back to me last night and said, I can definitely help with the feasibility study in regards to a crosswalk crossing in front. So that's there's mobilization on that one as well. And there's been parents who have commented as well. The one thing that I would say to you is you can help. How can you guys help? If you're getting dropped off in the morning, tell your parents, don't drop me off right in front of the school because it clogs up. There's 2 lanes. If people are dropping people off right in the front, it's a complication. If you're getting dropped off in the TAM parking lot, then you have to cross, that's a complication. If you're pulling in the driveway, don't have them drop you at the front door. I park right at the front, and every single morning when I come in, I have to stop because someone's dropping off their kids. Go all the way around the back. Your parents are going to have to go around anyway. Have them drop you off the back where there's a little bit more room. So those are things that you can do, but yeah, for sure, we're looking at the safety issue with the street, the Military Trail right in front.
I'd like to readdress the issue of the cafeteria food prices. Like my homeroom has told me that it's decided by the company that gives the food, and the options are as well. So my homeroom suggested that could we maybe have another company give us cafeteria food, or is that?
Yeah, well, I mean, again, that's the issue. I don't run the cafeteria. It has nothing to do with me. It's a private company that does that. It's a private catering company. Remember that a private catering company has to make a profit. If the school ran it, we would run it to break even. So the prices would be lower. They're not running it to break even. They're running it to make money. That's their business. That's how they survive. Now, they do have to respond to their clientele, like any business should, right? I mean, any business is going to respond to their clientele. So is there input into what can be offered there? Yeah, they're going to have to, they have to work on, there's parameters around food services. All schools in Ontario can only do certain foods, right? They can't, so you can't have sugar food anymore, you can't have sugar drinks anymore, you can't have those things. So those are regulations that they have to live by. But within that regulations, and they have to make a profit. So there's those parameters. But within that, they can offer a lot of different things. If the student body, if the clientele is saying you're not offering the things that we like, they should listen to that. I would have no problem brokering a meeting between student representatives or student voice to say, here's what we would like to see. But it's not just, can you have better food? Like, what does that mean? I don't even know what that means. What does that look like? A lot of people are saying, could we have some more overtly healthy options? What does that look like? What are options that you could have? Then we could have a conversation with the company to say, what's their cost? Because they work it out of cost per ingredient. What's their cost that they can offer instead of $3 or whatever it is for a slice of pizza? Is there a $3 option that you would prefer? Absolutely, we should have that. So I'm going to be looking at a conversation with the vendor, and if the vendor, you know, if through that vendor isn't willing to sort of listen, then at the end of the day, I'm the one who signs the contract to say this is the people who have that. If they're not, then they're not going to be the vendor.
Just to let the hall know that we are running a bit out of time. We have about 10 minutes left. So one at a time.
Somebody who hasn't, yeah, let's do the people who haven't. So to touch on the TV things that you're going to say, how are students supposed to look at them without a hall pass?
Well, but I mean, there's the idea that you can be doing it ongoing, right? There's lunchtime when it's going to be on. You're going to be going. There's more times than that. Will there, because there's going to be screens throughout? There's 3 to start. My hope is that there'd be more. It makes sense to have one probably down by the gym. It makes sense to have one in the cafeteria, possibly, although it's a sensory overload in that place anyway. But is it going to be like, okay, now we have to be in the halls to hear the announcements? No, that's not what it's going to be. Because it's constantly going, it's going to be up to the people who put announcements in to say, is there something that absolutely needs to go out to everybody? And that's on the teachers who put them in and the student groups that put them in to say, you guys keep putting them in there, right? And everybody complains about it, but yet everybody keeps putting stuff in there. So yeah, there's going to be a protocol around that, but is it going to be, okay, now the halls are open? No.
All right, so about the lates, I understand how like the late thing of that late policy is there for like our like educational and stuff. I understand that, but like about the penalties, there was like one penalty where like there's a 2-week suspension of sports or extracurriculars, but like how does that penalty like penalize people that aren't playing any sports or on an extracurricular activity? I feel like that's discrimination to people that are involved in school.
Well, I would say, again, the point is that the school exists for one reason, and then it has all these ancillary things as well, right? The reason that it's open, the reason that we're funded, the reason that I have a salary is for education. And so that's the point of it. If other stuff gets in the way of that, I would say that I'm a big proponent of the fact that extracurriculars actually helps education. And those people who are involved in sports, those people who have more to do more. More often than not, the people who get in the most trouble are the people who just have nothing else to do. So they, because they're not busy with sports. So I'm totally on board with the fact that the more sports you have, the better the school is. But that being said, the idea is that you are student athletes, not the other way around. You're not athletes who go to school. You're student athletes. And so if you're having trouble getting to a class, then you need to refocus your time and your energy and say, okay, let's not think about anything else but school. And so I think it's a good, it's something that's entirely in your control, especially if you're continually late for second period, that's entirely in your control. I mean, there's no reason for that. And let's have a higher standard for ourselves than just, I get to school on time most of the time, right? That should be 100%. There's no reason why you can't. You should be late ever. So I like the fact that it's there. Again, the policy isn't in place that automatically, because we can track you, right? We can track that as soon as you get to 5, there's a button that's triggered and we know about it. It's not that. It's that if the classroom teacher is seeing that this is a problem, then things are coming. It's always in the discretion of the teachers to say this is an issue and this isn't. So it's not like it's automatic. As soon as it gets to that number, bing, up comes the report. We hand it to Mr. Hackett. You're out. That's not how it works. It's the idea is there's all this stuff leading up to it to sort of intervene. Yeah, and so there's other things that go along with that. So there's teachers who are involved in monitoring attendance for like all students, right? And so there's follow up with that. They're intervening in different ways for sure. There's a progression at which point it gets to the vice principals, and then the vice principals are contacting home and dealing with things, and then eventually it will lead to students being suspended from school, right? And and it sounds silly, right? If you're late and skipping, and I'm gonna suspend you from school. That sounds ridiculous. It sounds counterintuitive. The problem is that there's a security issue in that the fact that I'm responsible for all of you at all times between 8:30 and 2:30. I need to know exactly where you are. If I don't know where you are, I can't take that risk. And so the only way that I alleviate the school and the board and myself is to say that you're no longer in the school. And so I hope it never gets to that point. I really don't. It's counterintuitive to all of us as educators to say, go home because you're not coming to school, so don't come to school. But I hope we don't get to that point, but there's all these layers that are involved as well.
Okay, I feel like the problem with students eating in the hallways is that they don't want to be in the caf because they want to be able to wear their sweaters. And I know that it's a security issue, but why don't we just have lanyards with their school IDs on them?
Yeah, we had that in the past. Long before I got here, there was every single student in the school had to wear their student IDs at all times. You can imagine the issue with that. As soon as you lose it, it's a constant thing. And then I'd be dealing with, why do we have to wear our lanyards all the time? And when do I have to do it? If I get it, it gets dirty, if I have to wear them in, blah, 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 blah. Yeah, for sure. I'd like to see that ways that the cafeteria becomes more used. There's a lot of, we need to think about space, and that's why we're looking at the other pit as well. But I don't think the answer is, let's say that you don't wear your uniform when you go into the cafeteria. That's not the best way to do it. We do need to cut it off pretty soon, maybe 2 more.
Okay, so on the topic of hall passes, they're a good idea. They actually work, so like we all support them, right? But is there a way to make them more sanitary? Because as soon as the hall passes came into effect, this is from experience, I'm a person who rarely even gets sick. So coincidentally, when they started showing up, I got sick for a week, and a bunch of my other friends also got sick. And also touching on the eating in the caf, I feel like as though the reason that students don't eat in the caf and they like to eat in the halls because it's more comfortable. Some people want to study, right? And they don't want the loud noise in the caf. Like personally, I usually have 2 tests or 2 quizzes a week, so I need to study at lunch. And I also want to eat at the same time to give my brain some energy, some brain food. And also, they eat in the English hallway, upstairs with the big windows, because it's more attractive because there's a lot of light. So if you notice, like other schools, there's more like Mary Ward, there's big glass windows. You go to O'Connor and stuff. And when I talk to my friends that go to other schools, they usually refer to our school as a school that looks like a basement, because the lighting is unattractive in the hallways of that.
Absolutely, I completely agree that there's a lot of issues with the facilities here that have to be addressed. I've already talked to my superintendent in regards to that for sure. There's a lot of issues with that, and the more you voice that, the more more people will listen. So I want to hear that for sure. Yeah, I understand that there's been some discussion about, could we then say that the cafeteria is the noise, like, so like, people have said we have music there, that's a possibility. And then perhaps the green pit part where we're gonna have tables, that's quiet zone. So, like a little bit of conversation, but we wanna keep the noise down because some students wanna study, some students want to be able to eat in peace, and the noise, I don't know how you eat in that cafeteria. I go down there and I think it's my age. I ate in there when I was a student there, and I didn't notice how loud it is, and then I get to be 40-ish. And I'm 41, I'm not that bad. But now it's just like, oh my God, this is unbelievable. I think there must be something that happens to the adult brain. For sure, so there's a possibility for that. I think we do have to, I know there's lots of people who want to talk. This is not the last one. And there's a very real possibility that what I may do, now that there's such vigor and energy of conversation, because you guys are grade 12 and this is kind of your last shot at it, I may offer like an after school possibly. I don't know if people would want to do this. Yeah, well, yeah, but it's just the idea that, there's only so much class time, right? I can take from students. So there's a possibility that we can expand this for sure. Remember that the hashtag is there, right? It's monitored by a lot of people, not just me. There's people at the board who actually are following that now and saying, wow, great, what great idea is amazing. Again, the best way to shut that thing down is to start being disrespectful or personal or using it as some sort of a platform for something other than positive, positive change. Positive change doesn't mean you always have to be positive, meaning everything's great. No, it's not rainbows and unicorns and everything's perfect. That's not what I'm talking about. But if you're going to make a suggestion, realize the easiest way to not be heard is to be disrespectful, to be, you know, arrogant or those sorts of things. That's easy to dismiss. I can shut that down very quickly. And I would. If people are going to be disrespectful in the way they do it, I will shut it down. But if you want to, there's offering suggestions is always good. I'm not a big fan of people who just complain. I really am not. I've let my kind of everybody in my life know that if you're just going to complain, I sort of shut you off right away. I really don't listen to critics all that much. But if you're going to say, this is what's wrong, this is what we could do. What about this? Here's an opportunity. Here's an idea. So if you're saying, as a for instance, we'd like to see different food in the cafeteria. Well, what would you like to see? What are the options? There's a starting point for a discussion. Instead of just, you know, a gripe fest where people are just complaining. I mean, that doesn't really go very far. It really doesn't, nothing much happens from that. So I would say there's that. We're gonna have these notes are available that people can look at. The good thing about this session is it's recorded too, so it's live streamed, but you can go to, there's a YouTube, you can just go to YouTube and watch this session again or any of them. So to be able to sort of, because you might want to context back to it or those sorts of things. We're going to be looking at having more of these for the course of the year, probably one around January, February-ish. And then at the end of the year as well, to sort of as a look back and move forward, because those are the times when decisions are often made. And we want to be able to make good ones that are based on what you're talking about. And if there's more suggestions, if there's really a suggestion, there's no reason you can't come in the office and say, Mr. Watson, can I have a second? Absolutely. I mean, for sure. There's ways to get that through. So I thank everybody for it. I thank the councils for moderating and listening and taking those notes. And I think, you know, PAC's got some things to hear about, and environmental council's got some stuff to hear about, and all the councils have some stuff that they want to perhaps consider to better serve you guys. And I know for sure that I do. So I think we're kind of pretty much at the end of it now, you guys. We do want to be able to get back to your first grade class. Follow up with this, right? Tell your teacher we'd like to follow up with what we